And the thing that I'm so excited about is like that's with the generative feedback loops. Next week here in San Francisco, it's the Gen AI Summit, and I'm gonna demo this on the big screen. What we're now doing in Weaviate, what we're working towards, that if you create a collection, you give it an instruction in the collection creation. So, for example, you create a collection and you call it products, and then you say like every description should be in English, and you start to just add data to the database as you've always been doing that before. But there's a generative model next to it that just has a scheduler and that just goes through all your data. And if the data that you store does not adhere to what's in the instruction, it just updates it for you, right? And so we really this going back to that term of weaving an AI native, right? The model and database together being AI native. The way that people use our database and work with it is so different than traditional databases. It's just so different. That's why I'm so happy that so many people support vector embeddings, because that shows that the market wants it. And now we need to lead the way to the next step. There's like it's not SQL, it's not NoSQL, it's AI native. And it's like this always, I love when you see these aha moments on stage. So for example, the first example that we had with this is actually on our website, is with Airbnb data. So the instruction that we give is basically in the data set like every listing should have a valid description. If you now add data just without a description, it takes the information that it has, generates a description, stores that into the description property in the document, right, in the object. It does that for you. The the saying I always have is like, we have this famous saying, shit in, shit out. And I said like, this is the first time with AI native databases that we can turn chicken shit into chicken salad. That is really new. And in Weaviate, you do it like in a handful of lines of code.
Or you could tell it to generate translations, like someone puts the description of the property in English, but we want to have a description of the property in Spanish and French and German.
Yeah, and building on that, so now yesterday had a conversation with somebody about e-commerce, and what they're thinking about is that they're saying, well, we can now do real-time personalization. Let's say that somebody always buys yoga stuff, right? So apparently this person is interested in yoga. So then basically what you can give as an instruction is like, okay, generate a description for this user based on previous buyer behavior. So then if somebody searches for socks, you can generate an image of the socks by giving it the image as just the base64 rendering of the image. And the text, hey, these are the yoga products that this person bought. So then if somebody goes to that page, they see the socks, but they might be on a yoga mat or something, right?
Right.
That kind of stuff, that's not science fiction, that's real right now. And in the AI native database with Weaviate, you do that in a handful of lines of code. That's different, right? So that's what I mean. That's an example of all these kind of differences. And we can keep going like with many of these kind of ideas. And that's what we want to power.
Well, so I understand that in the e-commerce use case. What's an example that might apply in like the financial world? You have a good...
Yeah, sure. That can be related to, let's say that in your banking app, you might have certain, labels you've created yourself, right? So how you want to organize your financial spending. So now basically you can give it the instruction every time a new transaction comes in, label it based on these labels that the user has created, right? And then the model tries to do that, and the model says, I don't have.
So you're sort of using the vector database to do classification.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. It's anything you can express in an instruction. And I think, and now the big difference sits in the fact that the classification, that is not a similarity search type classification, but that is a Gen AI type classification. That's very different.
What do you mean?
Yeah, so the example how I often explain the difference between something being or not being AI native is that I always say, like, so if I rip out the AI thing in the app, does the app still work? So an example, I always give the example of like a customer service tool, right? One thing that you could do is that if you say, okay, I want to add labels to, if a question comes in, I want to add labels to it, and then maybe you have like similar answers.
Maybe I've answered this before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the non-AI native way of doing that is like, question comes in, you vectorize it, attach like a bunch of labels based on that. They say, okay, what are the most common answers to this label? And you add it to the as an answer, right? If you then take out the AI element, then just that automatic answering doesn't work anymore, right? So, but it's like the service still works. The AI native way of doing it is like you still vectorize it, you still store it, but now you tell a generative model, search for relevant answers to the vector space by vectorizing, searching, and retrieving and determining if it's a good answer, and generate an answer based on that. And now you're not labeling it and having a couple of potential answers. You just have the model go back and forth between the database, search itself, generate an answer, and add that maybe as a threat to the interaction with the customer in the customer service system. That's very different. That's what I would call AI native. Because if you now take the AI out or the machine learning part, it just doesn't do anything. It doesn't work anymore. Your solution is broken.